we'll use the browser MCP a little bit, and then we'll work on some Gemini.md files before finally using those to try and generate a full app in the end. So anyone who hasn't used it, it's just like Claude Code. There's a Gemini CLI app. You install it with npm, and then you can spawn it up. Two ways to do it. You can use an API key, which then will bill your API key, or you can just log in like you can with Claude Code to your Google account. And when you hit very similar to Claude Code here. You hit a chat bot window, and you can say things like, generate me a poem. A little cheekier than Claude Code, and it's thinking. It tries to like be funny, I guess.
To share your screen.
Oh, yeah. A good idea. Anyway. All right. So you see here, I have the Gemini window. Just did that. I can do that again. I'll say, generate me a 2-line here. Let it do its thing. Hey, data. And you can go back and forth like you can in the browser window, asking it questions. It keeps the context. Cool thing is it actually tells you the context here. You can see I'm using Pro. I'm going to run out of credits with Pro, so that'll probably kick me off that before long. Really where power comes is when you want to use it for other things. So if I come over here, I have this QA bot I've been working on. Again, it's just Gemini, but just like Claude, Gemini has really good support for MCP. So I've downloaded this Chrome browser extension with an MCP server, and I can connect an individual tab to an MCP server, and then I can say in here, if I go into the Gemini in here, type places near, maybe just to be safe, I'll tell it use Chrome to go to Google and search for Thai places near me. Return top 10 results. Yeah, I don't know. This always allow doesn't seem to work. It seems like I have to, every time I spawn Gemini, I have to hit it instead of like, I need to retry it. Make sure it actually has it. Yeah, yes. I think that should work. That again, then we can come back to it if it doesn't work. Okay, yeah. And so then you can do other things like go to Hacker News, click the top 10 into the top 10 results, and provide me a summary of each. Make this a JSON list matching a type like title string, URL string, and summary string.
When you use the browser MCP, does it have the permissions that you have on Chrome, or do you have to enable like logins if you're using different accounts? Like for Google Maps, for example, did it use location data, or was it logged in to know that you are based in Seattle?
It's actually using my any tab you want. You could just enable it per tab. So as long as it's, if it's in a Chrome that you have all that configured on, then it'll just use anything that Chrome would normally use. Okay, and then like a step could be things like top on Reddit, go to the top on Hacker News, see if there's any overlap between them, and build real functionality. I think one thing here is I have to be specific. So like I always tell it do the JSON list, and so both of these CLIs do this, but they allow for, let's see if I can come here. They allow for a down file where you can add you just makes a prompt. So in this case, I think I'm just using the wrong slash here. So in this case, I do if I add a Gemini folder in my home directory, then I can add a Gemini.markdown. And just to show an example, I could say really fun. I could say always like a pirate. And if I go back into it,
did you just brew install Gemini to get this?
I npm installed it, but if it knows what MCP servers, yeah, see, it talks like a pirate. So cute. But one thing that I've done is if I ask it to generate, let's see if I just tell it write quick script to the front page of Reddit and provide the top 10 results. The web page, no. Write this as a script I can run separately. Right. So it defaults to Python. You see what I'm going to do is right now, let me just kill it. And I'll go over here and I'll say, let's remove the pirate. Let's say you are a software engineering and quality assurance assistant. Okay. Your of choice is TypeScript. Always default to it unless otherwise requested. Another thing that I added, I think is really useful, is It's like always don't just go and start doing things because that can be really annoying, especially if you've already allowed the permissions. Like it can start going through and things, moving things, redoing things. So you could say like for request, take the following steps. 1, start in plan mode. Start by analyzing the request and planning out a series of steps that you plan to take before doing any work. 2, present plan as the series of steps asking for any feedback. 3, okay, present plan for taking in, maybe I can feedback, update plan if needed, and always ask for confirmation before beginning work. All right, now if I try it again, let's say that again. Write a script I can use to pull the front page of Reddit, to scrape page of Reddit, summarizing the top 10 results. Still defaulting to Python. No, maybe I need to be explicit. Maybe what I'll say is write all code in TypeScript for every request. No other languages unless explicitly asked. Let's see if we do any better. One Gemini file. All right, let's try it again. Yeah, there we go. Package JSON, node fetch, write the TypeScript code, provide instructions. Yeah, that was pretty good. So the like global Gemini, I'm gonna quit out of this and show what, and I'll go to another. Let's go to projects, Gemini, and we'll call it maybe a forum. Code, projects, Gemini, forum. Okay. And in here, so you have your top level Gemini.md, but then you can also add one per every folder. And what it does by default is if you have a Git repo, any folders within the Git repo, it'll look like if I make 4 folders, like a folder within a folder within a folder, I can have a Gemini in each one, and it'll all the way back to where it sees a Git folder, and then it'll also use the one in the home folder. So you can nest these Gemini MDs, so different folders. If you want it, like in a lot of code bases, you'll have a bunch of subsystems. Each subsystem can have its own Gemini file describing what the subsystem is, its architecture, and how to work on it. So let's just add one here. And we'll say forum, call it forumly. Say a simple forum where people can post and others can rate their post 0 to 5. All right, maybe app simple application structure. Let's say we'll have a homepage. Homepage shows a list of all posts in order of creation, timestamp, / allows for creating a new post, a title and body, post ID, page for showing the page that displays the post, and has buttons for rating 0 to 5. Maybe we can even add /feed. All right. Page containing all posts by containing like maybe 10 posts by rating. Maybe that works. All right. And then we can say like architecture, web app, forumly is a web app using React following frameworks. Let's do that. Okay. Following framework, React, state stand for persistence. You say tailwind, and maybe that's good. And then expectations, maybe 1, do not over-engineer, prefer the simplest solution. You said, following for persistence, let's see, prefer a front-end only solution, and with local store for persistence, for a front-end only solution. Do not add a backend at this time. Keep all code properly typed. All right, let's just do that. And then I can go spawn Gemini again. I connect it to VS Code, which is pretty nice. And then you see now it reads 2 Gemini files. So now I have these 2 spawned up. It has my high level one, and now it has a pretty decent spec, which is a lot. But if I just asked it to generate a forum with rating, it probably wouldn't work. But now I can say like implement project in a subfolder called forumly. Nice plan. Create a project directory, initialize React app, install dependencies, configure Tailwind, implement routing, implement sysstand store, develop components, ensure all components store logic are properly typed with TypeScript. Yep, sounds good. Yes, allow always. And then we'll let that go. I think it'll take a little bit of time, but and it goes if there's any questions, feel free to them. Michael, how's the experience with Gemini and CLI versus Claude Code? Generally, I think Claude Code has been a lot smoother. I've had to do a lot more hand-holding with Gemini and like constantly prompts. One thing I have to like constantly allow things, where with Claude Code, I can basically allow everything once and then just come back to it. And I've used Claude Code a little bit more, so maybe, give like a non-biased answer, but with Claude Code, I can do things like I do a lot of piping and stuff via prompts and things like that I haven't actually done in Gemini. I think the agent mode in Claude Code is definitely like probably the best. At point it's even better than just vanilla cursor. And so maybe like Gemini, they aren't like, that's not a priority or something like that. But the agent mode is definitely a lot worse in Gemini than it is in Claude Code. Like even if you're watching what's going on here, it's trying to install Tailwind, it's going back and forth, where like Claude would have just worked. First command would have worked. Some of that I think is also because it seems like Gemini can't do interactive. Like so it tries to find commands it can run that don't require any interactivity, where Claude Code, like if it prompts yes or no, Claude Code will like hit you. And that's a huge hang up. When you're doing something like this, installing dependencies in a TypeScript project, there's a ton of those yes and no's that Gemini gets really hung up on. We'll see if this gets done on time. If it doesn't, I think I've showed off the primitives, but there is a workflow I was doing kind of earlier where once I had it build this thing out, then I can use the browser MCP and I can say like, okay, now test that feature and come back with, workflows with the browser, come back with, if what worked, what didn't. And then when it comes back with what didn't work, I can say, hey, now go update that. So it gets to be like almost this nice like flow where it both writes the code, tests it, fixes its own code, tests it, and then loops through with me having to do literally nothing. Tons of allows.
For the allows, do you think, is that something you can prompt away? So one thing the Lindy agent has to do is in the prompt, they'll say, hey, you're an independent autonomous agent, like never ask for permission, do as much as you can to figure it out yourself. Have you tried different ways of potentially prompting it or putting that in the markdown file just so it knows that it's able to have a little bit more autonomy?
I haven't tried that, but I don't think that would work for like removing files and stuff like that, because I think they don't want the liability of saying we didn't ask for permission. So Claude Code does similar. It just like if I allow, it persists. It does not do it here.
Makes sense.
Okay. Says on. So now let's see if I can actually only works. Yeah, here's the thing. I think it will be here and run. Yeah, another is like there. It tells you should work, don't, and so it's actually even building. So I could probably just tell it this and have it through. But a lot of times, like last one I did, it worked, but the command it gave me was inaccurate. I had to go in and actually look for it myself in the package, and then it worked. So it seems like it's not great about that. And then even like when it did work, the implementation, it didn't look great. Like it was bare bones. There was no styles. It was just like some crappy HTML elements. So maybe it's also something in their data set, because I know like both in Claude, they look the same. If you ask it to build something, like that might be different, but the UI looks almost like standard, like the all UIs combined. So something Google is doing to like deprioritize features. Okay, let's see if that works. PM start. Okay, it broke. Further that time. Now we'll let that one run. If it doesn't, then we'll because I think we're at time. Part of these problems are just because it's Flash. I think it's a lot faster. When I was putting this together, I was using Pro, and it was a lot better. Still not as good as Claude, though. I would say it's still not as good as Claude Code is. Nope, still failed. So if that's my biggest complaint, it's for Pro. I wanted to use Pro, but I have to like actually go in, and once out of credits, maybe it's because I see API key up, or whatever. But when I go in, I'm out of credits. If I want more, I actually have to message someone.